Welcome back to Singapore Property Talk Law.
Great to be here.
So if you're trying to, get a real handle on what's happening with HDB resale prices right now, well, you've come to the right place.
Definitely.
Lots happening. We've dug into the latest data, looked at what the experts are saying, all to bring you the crucial insights.
That's right.
And hey, if you find this deep dive useful, please do hit that like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss our next one.
Always more to talk about in Singapore property.
Absolutely. Okay, so our mission today is pretty simple. Really understand the current HDB resale price trends, and importantly, what the smart money thinks will shape them, in the near future.
Sounds good. Let's jump in.
Right. So first things first, recent price growth. What are the numbers telling us?
Okay, so the very latest figures, they point towards a bit of a cooling trend. In the first quarter of 2025, we saw resale prices go up 1.6%.
1.6%. Still going up then.
Still up, yes. But what's interesting, maybe, is that this 1.6%, it's actually the slowest growth we've seen since the end of 2023. Back then, it was 1.1%.
Ah, okay, so the pace is slowing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It suggests, maybe a potential shift in the market's momentum.
A slowdown. Yeah, that's definitely something a lot of buyers will be watching very closely. But hang on, doesn't the number of sales, the transactions, actually go up?
Ah, good point. Yes, that's a key detail. Resale transactions did increase by 2.6% in that first quarter.
Okay.
So we saw 6,590 flats change hands. That's up from about 6,424 the quarter before.
So more activity quarter on quarter.
Yes, and here's where it gets a bit more layered, when you compare it to the same time last year, Q1 2024.
Right.
The number of transactions was actually 6.8% lower.
So up from the previous quarter, but down year on year. What do you make of that?
Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is it just a sort of seasonal bounce after maybe a quieter end to the year? Or are there other things influencing buyers right now? It's a bit of a mixed picture.
Yeah, nuanced for sure. Okay, now, the Minister for National Development, Mr. Chee Hong Tat, he's weighed in recently too. What's his take on where things are headed?
Minister Chee, he mentioned he expects a moderation. That was the word he used. Moderation in resale flat prices.
Moderation, okay. And why does he expect that?
The reasoning, it really revolves significantly around supply, available flats.
Ah, supply. Always comes back to supply, doesn't it?
Pretty much. He highlighted that, a growing number of these new BTO flats, the ones built in the last few years, they're getting close to their 5-year minimum occupation period, the MOP.
Right, the MOP.
And he specifically noted an increase is expected from 2026 onwards, so more flats becoming eligible for resale.
Okay, the MOP factor. So basically, as these newer flats hit the resale market, the bigger supply pool should theoretically ease the upward pressure on prices. Is that the idea?
That's the core thinking, yes.
Yeah.
It's that classic supply and demand equation.
Makes sense.
And just to give a little context, remember the previous minister, Mr. Desmond Lee?
Right.
He talked about how COVID really messed with construction timelines.
Oh, yeah, the delays were huge.
Exactly. So that severely restricted the supply of new homes hitting the market. But at the same time, demand shot up.
Yeah.
Changing social norms, work from home needs.
Right. Everyone wanted more space or their own place.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So you had this perfect storm. Less supply, more demand. That really spiked BTO application rates and, of course, pushed up HDB resale prices quite sharply.
Yeah, those were definitely interesting times for the market. So fast forward to now, how's the government tackling the supply issue on the new flat side, the BTOs?
Well, for 2025, the plan is to launch about 19,600 BTO flats.
19,600. Okay.
And if you zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture, they're actually on track to launch around 102,300 BTO flats between 2021 and 2025.
Wow, over 100,000 in 5 years.
Yeah, and that actually beats their original target, which was about 100,000. So it shows a really significant push to boost that new housing supply.
That's a lot of new flats coming online. Okay, but back to the MOP trend you mentioned. I thought I read somewhere the number of flats hitting MOP has actually been decreasing recently. How does that fit in?
Yes, that's a really critical point for analysis right now. You're right. After hitting a peak, I think it was around 30,920 flats in 2022.
Yeah.
The number reaching MOP is projected to fall for the third year straight. It might actually hit an 11-year low in 2025, something like just under 7,000 flats, maybe 6,974.
An 11-year low. But wait, how does that square with the expectation of moderation? Fewer flats entering resale should mean more price pressure, shouldn't it?
You'd think so, right? But here's the fascinating part. Even with this near-term dip in resale supply from MOPs,
Hmm.
most property analysts, they generally believe a big surge in resale prices is, well, unlikely
Unlikely. Why?
because of two things, mainly. First, that anticipated surge in MOP flats from 2026 onwards. The market is looking ahead, you see.
Ah, okay.
Uh,
Looking beyond the immediate dip.
Exactly. And second, that steady, strong supply of new BTOs we just talked about. Both factors are expected to sort of keep a lid on things.
Right. So even if there are fewer resale options coming right now because of the MOP timing, the expectation of many more later, plus all the new BTOs, that's predicted to keep the resale market, let's say, stable-ish.
Pretty much in check, yeah. That seems to be the consensus view.
Which naturally leads to the question, is the government thinking about stepping in again? More cooling measures, perhaps?
Well, Minister Chee addressed that. He said the authorities will be monitoring things very carefully, watching the situation closely.
Standard government response, maybe?
Perhaps. But he did point to the recent easing of the resale price index growth, that 1.6%, as an encouraging sign.
So they see the moderation happening already to some extent.
It seems so. For now, the main strategy seems to remain focused on boosting that supply of new BTO flats. That's seen as the primary tool to influence the market.
Okay, stick to the supply plan. But what about measures already in place? Like that 15-month wait-out period for private property owners wanting to buy resale HDBs. How's that working?
Yes, the wait-out period. Introduced back in September 2022. It's definitely had a noticeable effect.
In what way?
What's quite interesting is that data shows it has successfully reduced the proportion of private property owners buying those higher-priced resale HDB flats.
So it did cool that specific segment of demand.
It appears so. And the minister also mentioned that it's considered a temporary measure.
Oh, temporary.
Yes, he indicated it could potentially be reviewed, maybe even removed, if or when resale flat prices moderate as they expect them to.
Interesting. So those measures aren't necessarily permanent fixtures. There's flexibility there depending on market conditions.
Exactly. It highlights a willingness to adapt the approach.
Good to know. Okay, let's shift slightly. One topic that always gets people talking. VERS, the Voluntary Early Redevelopment Scheme. Any updates there?
Ugh. Yeah, VRS. Always a hot topic. On that, Minister Chee basically reiterated that the details, well, they'll be shared at the appropriate time.
So still waiting then?
Still waiting on the specifics, yes. But it's clearly, a very significant thing for many HDB owners, especially those living in the older estates.
Understandably. Can you just quickly remind us what VRS is generally about?
Sure. The basic idea behind VRS is to rejuvenate the more mature HDB estates. Typically, when the flats are getting quite old, maybe around the 70-year mark or older,
Okay.
it involves offering compensation and rehousing options to the current residents, allowing the area to be redeveloped.
So urban renewal for older public housing.
Precisely. And the broader goal, as the ministry sees it, is really about ensuring the long-term health and vibrancy of our public housing stock. It's about tackling both aging buildings and, frankly, an aging population's needs within those estates.
Right. Makes sense. So while the VRS details are still under wraps, it's clearly a key part of the long-term vision for HDB living in Singapore.
Absolutely. It underlines that commitment to, proactive planning and renewal, keeping things fresh.
Okay, great. Let's try and pull all this together then. What are the main takeaways for someone listening?
All right, so point one, HDB resale price growth is easing. That 1.6% rise is the slowest in a while.
Check. Slowdown noted.
Point two, supply is expected to increase significantly, especially from 2026 onwards as many more flats reach their MOP.
Right, the MOP wave is coming.
And that's coupled with the continued strong push on launching new BTO flats. Lots of them.
More supply, both resale and new.
Exactly. And the expectation is that this increased supply will put further moderating pressure on those resale prices.
Okay. And the government?
Point three, the government is watching closely. They see the current easing as positive, and their main focus remains on boosting BTO supply. But they've also signaled that existing measures, like the 15-month wait-out, are temporary and could be adjusted down the line.
So watchful waiting, focus on supply, but potential policy tweaks later.
Got it. That's a pretty good summary. I think the key thing for you, the listener, is to really grasp how that interplay between new BTO supply and the flats entering the resale market via MOP, how that dynamic will be the crucial driver of price trends in the next few years.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's leave you with a final thought to chew on. As we see more and more of these newer HDB flats hitting their MOP and that whole supply picture shifts, How might this changing landscape really fundamentally alter the way different generations of Singaporeans think about their housing choices?
Hmm.
Both for people looking to buy their first home or upgrading, and also for those thinking about selling their current place. It's a big question, right? With potentially some pretty significant knock-on effects for the whole future of public housing here.
Definitely food for thought. How will behaviors change? How will the market adapt?
Exactly. Something to ponder. Thanks for diving deep with us today on Singapore Property Talk Law.
My pleasure.